Good evening. We'll give it a couple more minutes, let people get in here that might be a little bit late, and then we'll get started. I think we'll get started now. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Chris Donnelly, a Region 1 Fish Program Manager stationed in Spokane, and joining me tonight is Bill Baker. Administering this call is Leah Snyder, who's stationed in Olympia. Leah will do question and answer and sort of organize that as we go, and she's also recording this. So for those of you that missed it, we are recording this meeting. If you're here for any other reason than to talk about Deer Lake, you're in the wrong meeting. Hopefully you are here to talk about Deer Lake. Quick update, we had a petition that came in. It's been a little bit over a month ago to talk about the merits of changing the season for Deer Lake from a March 1 to November 30 opener to a year-round opener. Quick business here. Bill will give a presentation, and then we will go into a question and answer session. If you're wondering about how your answers or questions will be recorded, or comments, we will be recording those by a live recording tonight, as well as we'll be writing those down. Any questions or comments that are conveyed tonight will be conveyed as well to the commission. And we will be doing that later in the month of January. With that, Bill, I'll leave it to you to give the presentation. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Chris, for the introduction. Appreciate that. Cue up my presentation here. And Chris or Leah, if you could let me know if you can see my screen.
We can see it, Bill.
Okay, great. All right. Hi, folks. As Chris said, my name is Bill Baker. I work for WDFW as the district fish biologist covering the 3 northeastern counties. And tonight, I'll be talking with you about this petition that was received by the commission to change the fishing season for Deer Lake in Stevens County. So I'm going to start here by providing some information about Deer Lake and its fish community, and then I'll discuss the petition, talk about the current and proposed fishing rules, and provide some supporting biological information. After that, I'll walk you through the petition process, the timeline, and public involvement. And following the presentation, Chris and I'll be happy to answer any questions. We'll conclude by taking public comment on proposed rules. Okay, so I'm guessing that most folks attending the meeting tonight are familiar with Deer Lake, but just in case you're not, Deer Lake is located in southern Stevens County, not quite an hour north of Spokane and about a half hour or so south of Chewelah. Deer Lake's a fairly large natural lake. It's about 1,163 acres, depending on the water level, with a maximum depth of about 75 feet. It sits technically within the Colville River watershed, but it's a closed basin lake with no surface water connection to other waters. Now, the fish community in Deer Lake is composed of self-sustaining lake trout, which are also known as Mackinaw, and a number of warm water fish species, including largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, green sunfish, yellow perch, and crappie, all of which were introduced in the late 1800s to early 1900s. And in addition to those, Deer Lake is stocked with rainbow and brook trout. In November, as Chris mentioned, the Washington Fish and Wildlife Commission received a petition requesting that the fishing season for Deer Lake be changed from the current March 1st through November 30th season to a year-round open season. The petitioner cited a number of justifications for the request, including increased angling opportunity, growing participation in ice fishing in Washington, including ice fishing for lake trout, potential increases in revenue to the local area related to additional angler trips. So, for example, revenue from gas and tackle sales and lodging. He also noted that Deer Lake has a fairly high density lake trout population, which could support additional fishing pressure, and that increased harvest of lake trout would reduce predation on stocked rainbow and brook trout. Overall, the petition was supported by WDFW staff as it aligns with Deer Lake fishery management goals of maximizing angling opportunity and reducing predation on those stock rainbow and brook trout, which would result in more of those fish available to anglers as well. Now, the department has heard some public support for the proposed season change, primarily from anglers wishing to bolster numbers of stock trout in the lake. In contrast, we've also heard some reluctance about a season change from anglers concerned about the potential for overfishing of lake trout and resulting decline in the quality of that fishery, including elimination of larger fish. As I mentioned earlier, currently Deer Lake is open to fishing from March 1st through November 30th, and game fish are subject to statewide minimum size and daily limits. Brook trout, which have no size or daily limit under statewide rules, are stocked in the Deer Lake, so they count as part of the overall trout daily limit. As of 2021, there's no longer a size or daily limit for lake trout statewide either. Now, to address concerns about protecting the quality of the lake trout fishery, noted on the previous slide, should Deer Lake be open to a year-round fishing season, a separate lake trout daily limit of 5 fish with no more than 1 over 30 inches is proposed. Now, this slide shows a link frequency distribution for lake trout and Deer Lake. On the x-axis here is the length of the fish in inches, and on the y-axis is the percentage of fish of a given length. And you can see that in 2022, we sampled fish over a fairly broad size range from about 6 to 35 inches, but the bulk of the population was composed of fish ranging from about 14 or so up to the mid 20-inch range. And although present, fish in excess of 30 inches do make up a relatively small proportion of the sample. Now, the next graph I have to show you here just shows lake trout length at age from samples collected in 2005, which are shown here in blue, and again in 2022, which are shown in red. On the x-axis of this graph is the age of the fish, and on the y-axis is the fish length. Now, while we collected a broader size range of lake trout in the more recent sample, growth really hasn't changed. Lake trout in Deer Lake exhibit fairly slow growth, requiring about 20 years or so to reach 30 inches. Now, in contrast, in Loon Lake, which sits right next door, but has a lower density lake trout population, growth is much faster. So length at age for lake trout in Loon Lake is shown here in gray, right up here. And you can see that they require about half the time to reach 30 inches, so somewhere around 6 to 10 years of age. A reduction in the number of smaller, younger lake trout in Deer Lake by additional harvest would likely result in increased growth for the remaining fish and would also reduce predation pressure on stock rainbows and brook trout. Okay, so that's about it for biological information. Next up here, just want to talk about a little bit about the petition timeline and public involvement. As a reminder, the petition requesting a season change for Deer Lake was received in November. In mid-December, the commission accepted the petition and directed staff to pursue rulemaking. On December 19th, a rulemaking proposal was filed, and on January 3rd, the proposal was posted to the website, to the WDFW website for public comment. So that brings us to today, January 16th, which is shown here in bold, and our regional public meeting to garner input on the proposal. Input received tonight and in the coming days will be considered by the commission. And then during their January 26th meeting, the commission will be briefed on this issue by staff, and they'll hear additional public testimony. Following that, on February 16th, the commission will issue a decision on the proposal, and if the commission approves the proposed rule changes, rules would take effect 31 days after filing. So tonight we're asking for your input. There are a couple of different ways to comment. You can either provide verbal testimony tonight during the meeting, or during the January 26th commission meeting, or you can provide written comments anytime between now and January 28th on the Deer Lake Fishing Public Engagement webpage, which can be accessed from the WDFW homepage by typing rulemaking in the search box in the upper right-hand corner, which is circled here in red. When you do that, if you click on the first search result, which comes up for current rulemaking activity, that will take you to the web page pictured here. And then if you click on Deer Lake fishing regulations here under pending rulemaking, that's what's circled here in red. From here, you can access the public comment page, which is the one circled in red here. And once you click on that, it brings up this page where you can leave your comments. One other thing to note, the previous page also has information about how to access the public hearing to be held in January by the Fish and Wildlife Commission. It is currently scheduled to take place on January 26th from 2:05 to 2:35 p.m. But times for agenda items may change, so it's best to log into that meeting early if you're interested. And if you're only interested in watching the Zoom link that's shown here, we'll get you into the meeting. But if you want to provide testimony at the commission meeting, you will need to go to the WDFW homepage and scroll all the way to the bottom. That's the view that you see in the slide here, and click on Fish and Wildlife Commission. That'll bring up this page, and you'll want to click on Commission Meetings. Then if you click on upcoming meetings, and those scheduled for 2024, you can find the one you want, which is the January 25th to 27th meeting. And that will bring you to this page here. And if you scroll down until you get to January 26th, so you can see that here, then you'll want to click on the register online link. Okay, that'll bring up this registration form. You put in your information, and then toward the bottom of that form, you select item number 8, which is Deer Lake rulemaking. And then click submit. And if you do want to provide testimony during the commission meeting, please ensure that you complete this form by 5 p.m. the day before the meeting, as that's when registration closes. So that's important. Once you've completed the registration form, you'll be good to go. But again, we'll be happy to take your comments tonight if that works better for you. Or you do have the option to provide written comments, as I mentioned before. So those may be simpler options. Okay. So short and sweet, that's everything I have. Really appreciate your time, and at this point be happy to entertain any questions or take comments. Thank you.
Okay, for those attendees to raise your hand, there is a raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. It may also be a smiley face with a says reactions. Our first hand looks like it is going to be Jason. Jason, go ahead. Jason, I've prompted you to unmute.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, no, we're up here at North 2 Tackle. So Deer Lake is really close to ours. So I kind of speak on a huge behalf of our fishermen in the area. We are 100% in supportive up here of moving to a year-round season. I think it would create a lot of angler opportunity, as I think you guys agree. We are also noting that we see that you guys are putting a 30-inch rule restriction possibly on the overall size and going, instead of unlimited catch, back to 5 rule limit, which we 100% agree with that. That is a great opportunity to be able to retain the species and the size for years to come, but also be able to put a lot in fold. Are we looking at having this year-round opener go on before or after the Deer Lake Homeowners Association Derby? Do you guys know on that?
So, so if the rule is approved by the commission in February, it would go into effect 31 days after filing, which would probably put us sometime into, I would guess, April. Chris, correct me if I'm off base there. But that is earlier than the Derby occurred last year.
Okay. So for the current Derby, it would be the unlimited take, and they're going to still do that, which you guys are doing a great job. I mean, I think Deer Lake needs to get back to a proper manageable size, especially with our apex predator species, and instituting a 30-inch rule limit, I think, is a really good move on your guys' part. So I commend you guys on that, because that was our biggest concern, to go into a year-round and unlimited Mackinac take. It might deplete the resource. So kudos to you guys for keeping in mind of our older age species. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for your comment.
Our next hand is from Joe. Joe, go ahead. I have prompted you to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I have 2 questions. One is, I'm 100% in support of, I believe, but I've got a couple caveats. I mean, by going year round, that is going to put pressure, unless you're saying that it's just the basic season that you can do Rainbow and Brook, or is it just in the outside of the regular general season? Is it just Mackinac? That's what first question I have.
The
So-
fishery would be open to all species of fish, Joe. There wouldn't be anything different there.
Okay, then my follow-up question then is, seen, because of the pressure from year-round fishing, would Deer Lake get a larger allocation of stock fish than we have historically, given the size of our lake and then the number of anglers that are going to want to be use it during the course of the incremental season?
Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say, Joe. So we've been working on increasing the number of rainbow trout that we've been able to allocate for Deer Lake, and upping that pretty steadily over the last couple of years. The last 2 years we've been able to increase that, even in the face of existing hatchery infrastructure challenges. We've been able to make some changes to increase the number of fish that we're stocking. We likely would not be able to increase it beyond that at this juncture, beyond what we're currently doing. But that has been a pretty substantial jump over past stocking, and that's very intentional, knowing that there was both room to stock additional fish there, and that we were looking to bolster that stock trout fishery. Chris, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Go ahead, Joe.
No, go ahead, Chris. Go be as willing.
So, what we've been dealing with in the past decade with Deer Lake is the challenge has been finding places to grow advanced size fish. And you can stock fry brook trout or rainbow into the lake, and they essentially get consumed as fast as you put them in there. So our challenge is just to grow them to advanced sizes. We've done a number of things in the last couple of years. We've been reallocating fish from other fisheries and putting them in Deer Lake, along with some fish coming out of Colville Hatchery that are advanced size. And then we actually put a couple net pens in Lake Roosevelt, and we're rearing fish in Lake Roosevelt to advanced size in those net pens, and then pumping those fish back out of Lake Roosevelt, moving them up to Deer Lake. These are all pretty much extraordinary measures. And tapping out our budget and infrastructure as it sits. But we also think that the investment is well worth it, because Deer Lake is, very productive, really good for salmonids if you can get them in there and they can survive. And so, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our stocking's gone from, 10, 15,000 fish annually to, I think we are over 40,000 this year. And our goal is to try to hold it at that number. Bill, am I accurate on that? That's kind of off the top of my head.
Yeah, so it was a little higher than that, Chris. I believe we were stocking around 25,000 or so, but you're right that the number has increased to over 40,000 the last for sure this last year, and I believe the year before. So like I said, this is something that we've been working on. We've received this feedback from folks on the lake, as well as other anglers, that the trout fishery was underperforming, and like Chris said, it really comes down to how many advanced size fish that we can put into that lake, how many we have the infrastructure to rear. So we're doing everything that we can currently to bolster that fishery, Joe.
Okay, so no, I appreciate all of that, and I will tell you that, I live right on the front of the water here, and I live year round here, and this is the first year in the wintertime that I've seen fish surfacing at all. Last year, the year before, I never saw them. But I do see tons of ducks out there in front of our place, going and consuming the small fry, I believe. I can't prove that, but it certainly, I don't know why they wouldn't be there, and if they weren't. So I hope you guys will continue that. But I guess my last comment or observation is what you're saying. Even if we go year round, we're not going to get an increased limit or an increase, but you guys are going to continue efforts with trying to get larger fish that can defend themselves against the Mackinac at the same, correct? Am I correct in assuming that?
Well, again, Joe, the number of fish that we've stocked in recent years has increased pretty considerably from what we were able to do in the past, and it really has to do with some of the programming changes that Chris described, where we had to get creative and find places where we could grow advanced size fish that were outside our traditional hatchery infrastructure. So what I would tell you is, we're probably not going to be able to immediately expand beyond that, but we have certainly expanded trout stocking in recent years, and I think, like you said, that's showing up with fish, that you can observe and catch later in the season that we weren't seeing the last few years.
Okay. Hey, well, thank you for the response to all my questions. I don't want to take time from anybody else, but if you would indulge me with one question, is there anything out there on the horizon about, I grew up catching silvers on this lake, and I drive over to Loon Lake to fish for silvers, but is there any way that we can reintroduce as a biologist? And even if we don't fish for them for a number of plans to do that?
Bill, I'll take my first shot at it, and then you correct everything that's wrong. So Joe, where we've been with Deer Lake is, when we stocked kokanee in their past and we didn't have smallmouth and lake trout quite as abundant, they did pretty well. And as we've seen smallmouth bass and lake trout abundances go up, they consume the bulk of those kokanee, whether we stock them or they're naturally produced in there. So the answer around kokanee is, if we could get a balance of predators down lower than where we're currently at, there's a likelihood that kokanee would do well there. The quality, the water quality of Deer Lake, the amount of zooplanktons in the lake, it's hospitable to kokanee. It's simply getting those fish to recruit to adulthood prior to getting consumed. We've tried a lot of things. We stocked hundreds of thousands of kokanee in there, could not get them through the predator gauntlet. But that doesn't mean we wouldn't try again. And what we do is routinely monitor this fishery. We're watching it. We're watching abundances of predators. And if we see an opportunity, we'll be back with kokanee. Kokanee are very small and low cost for us to stock. And so, that's a fish that we'd like to do because they're considerably cheaper than growing advanced size rainbow or brook trout.
Okay. Hey, you answered my questions. Thank you. I think you're on the right track, and that would be awesome if we could eventually do this, and if this year-round fishing would help to produce that result. So thank you, and appreciate all your time.
Thank you.
Our next hand is from Ken. Ken, go ahead.
Let's see, make sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. It wasn't muted. Okay, first of all, thanks for putting this together, Bill and Chris. And, you haven't said much about 3 pens being reared on Deer Lake this year. And it's a great effort for us to do that. And this year has been marred with feeder problems that we're addressing and looking at getting some commercial feeders instead of the feeders, the game feeders that we're using currently. But we have 3 very dedicated families working to help make Deer Lake a productive lake. The other thing I want to say is, for anybody listening, we're not trying to get rid of all of the Mackinaw or lake trout. We're just trying to get it in balance so that we can have a nice population of rainbows, a nice population of brook trout, and a population of catchable lake trout for people to look at catching a 35-pound lake trout. So the goal is just to get our lake in balance. And that brings me to what we've had as an annual fish derby. And gosh, it would be nice to be able to somehow be able to postpone this year-round fishing gig until after May, because you witnessed that when I talked to you a year ago about this fishing derby, we kind of had the assumption that if we caught 50, that was kind of on the outside of being a whole lot. And we caught 3 times that, or almost 3 times that. So we know we have an extreme problem with overpopulation of lake trout, and we would really like to hold another derby, and I know the community would like to hold another derby. So if there's a way we could get, if it passes, if we could get the commission to say that would take effect in June, that would definitely be a nice viable option if we could look at doing that.
Yeah, Ken, so our rulemaking process isn't that nimble. You know, it's rigid for a reason, and the rules around when those laws get enacted are set in stone. So if the commission approves this, it goes into effect 31 days after we file the rule, and we'll file the rule sometime in February. Having said that, though, and I looked at your Derby data, you know, no boats really came in with more than 15 or 20 fish. So if we had a Derby and 3 people are on a vessel, they can still turn in 15 fish. I'm skeptical that you couldn't still have a successful Derby given that limit, and have some impact on the population as a whole. Bill, did you want to add something to that?
No, Chris, I think you covered that part well. And I do want to say though, Ken, to your earlier point, I was remiss in not acknowledging all of the hard work of the net pen co-op volunteers there on Deer Lake, and the work that's gone into producing those advanced size fish that are being reared in the lake in those net pens. Like you said, 3 dedicated families that are doing a lot of work there to try to bolster that stock trout fishery. And as I know, you know, because I've told you many times, but I want to acknowledge here publicly, we really appreciate the effort that you folks are putting in.
Yeah, me as well, Ken. Always appreciate your involvement in this, and a lot of our success is attached to the efforts that folks up there put out. So Ken, we'll talk more about this Derby once we get past this issue, but I think we can make it successful regardless of how the rule outcome is. And, you know, I thought it worked really well last year, and, you know, we'll figure something out.
People had the comments were they absolutely had a great time and asked if we could do it again. And I think this year we would like to make the Derby not only lake trout, but smallmouth bass also, so that we could kind of help manage that population a little better too.
Yep. Let's, not tonight, Ken, but we'll iron some of this stuff out over time here and be ready to go in the spring.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, our next hand is from Kevin. Kevin, go ahead.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, my dad beat me to it. So I do have one question. Bill, I know that when we had our meetings earlier on that we were looking at as many fish pens as we could get, and we got 3. If we could find another family, is there a possibility for a 4th pen in the future?
I think we're absolutely supportive of that, Kevin. We've pursued a couple of different options to try to come up with enough fish feed and funding to do that. We weren't as successful as we wanted to be in this last go round, but that's something that Chris and I are both fully supportive of for the future.
Okay, so the community that's hopefully listening, if you want to participate, there's a job opening. So also, as far as the tournament goes, my oldest son and I will be filling out the paperwork here the next few weeks to get it turned in.
Yeah, Kevin, when you send that in, make sure that Bill and I are in the email so we can track it and be helpful.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, I'm done. So do I mute myself?
I'll take care of it. Thanks, Kevin. Oh, sorry. Our next hand is from Jason. Jason, go ahead. I just prompted you to unmute. Your speaker was funny the first time.
Are we working there?
There you sounds good.
Okay. I wanted to completely thank Bill and Chris personally up here from North 2 Tackle. We have been meeting a few times off and on with Kevin and Ken over there at Deer Lake Homeowners Association. I think they're doing a great job. We do support, and I have multiple people seeing the fact that you guys want to do a size restriction. I think that is a very important part of managing this fishery. Us up here and a few of the guides in the industry, Clum Dog Outdoors and a few of those guys, we very well support the size restriction. I think that's important on not decimating the species, but at least controlling the species. I think that is very huge of us. And thank you very much, Bill and Chris, personally. We will continue to work with Ken and all of our customers here at the tackle shop to be able to get this into a manageable state and possibly support kokanee and big trout again in the future. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jason.
And our next hand is from Joe. Joe, go ahead.
Hey, just a quick comment back to Ken in terms of the net pens. Ken, if you want to hook up with me later, Wanakawin has about 9-10 families here that live year round. And I'm not positive, but I'll go do my work with the board and see if we couldn't take that responsibility on. Just FYI.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. It looks like that was our last hand. Just a reminder, there's a raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. And you can also, or sometimes it's a smiley face, sorry. And looks like Jason has his hand up and down. I'm going to allow you to unmute, Jason, if you would like.
Are you there again?
Yes.
Okay, is the Department of Fish and Wildlife still working with Deer Park School District as far as the trout release program that we did, five to 7 years ago? We used to release trout with the children from Deer Park Middle School. Is there any involvement in that anymore for the 5th and 6th grade classes?
I don't know, Jason. That's a program called Trout in the Classroom or Salmon in the Classroom, and it's coordinated out of Olympia. We haven't heard anything out of Deer Park, so I don't know if they're still doing it or not. But you know, we have hundreds of schools across the state that do that, so it wouldn't surprise me if they were still doing it. The scale at which they're producing fish, you know, it's a small number of fish, and it's a great program just from an education perspective, but maybe not a solution for, you know, stocking any number of fish that would help us.
Okay, thank you guys very, very much.
Thank you, Jason. And that was our last hand, Chris and Bill.
Okay, last call. We're going to sit here silently for a minute or so in case somebody comes up with something. But and while we're waiting for people to contemplate it, some folks don't like to talk in these forums. You know, Bill and I are both available either through email or phone. If you call the headquarters, they will link you up with us, and we'd be happy to have a conversation that way as well. I'll remind you that you have the ability to go in and provide written comment through the Fish and Wildlife Commission website, as well as sign up to testify with the commission on January 26th. The form would be very similar to what you're seeing here today. You'll have a 3-minute comment window. You give your comments to the commission and you'll be heard there. I assure you that what we heard tonight has been recorded. We will pass this on to the commission. I'm going to be giving a presentation to them on the 26th. What we heard tonight will be summarized and presented to the commission on that point. Otherwise, Leah, any other hands?
We have one last hand from Ken.
Okay,
Ken,
go ahead, Ken.
Ken, you've been unmuted. Go ahead.
You just answered it. I was considering during, going into their Zoom meeting and presenting the same thing. But if you've already got this and going to present it to them, I don't want to waste their time or mine and have a second go around with it unless you think it's necessary.
I don't think it's necessary for you to be there, Ken. We've taken written comment from Delpoa, Deer Lake Property Owners Association. We've heard from you individually as well as Kevin. I'm pretty sure I can carry the water on what you guys think of the program, the rule change. So I appreciate it. If you want to put your time in, feel free to, but I don't think it's going to add any more gravity than what you've already had.
Okay, great. I was hoping you were going to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate you being here. Leah, any other hands?
That was it.
Great. Okay. So a recap, feel free to reach out to Bill and I if you need to. You found the other ways that you can get involved. We appreciate everybody joining us tonight. We appreciate the comments. We'll be taking those forward to the commission on the 26th. Bill, any parting words before we go?
No, just really appreciate people tuning in tonight and letting your opinion be known, and appreciate the questions. Just thanks for being on the meeting.
And then as far as the outcome for this rule proposal, after we'll go to the 26th here with the commission, we give them a briefing on what we heard tonight. We give them a briefing on what our staff opinion on the rule is. A final commission ruling won't be until mid-February. I think it's on it's a virtual meeting on February 16th. So if you're curious about the outcome, you can tune into that. Or once that commission meeting has finished and the commission's made their decision, we'll also publish a news release that'll come out likely on the 17th of February. So by mid-February, we'll know the outcome of this whole process. Otherwise, I thank everybody for being here this evening. Leah, thank you very much for tuning in and helping us with this. Good to hear and hopefully see some of you folks again down the road. Have a good evening, and we'll see you soon.